His name is everywhere, but he's no longer with us. Trayvon Martin, 17 years old, gunned down for no apparent reason. Today I have the opportunity to speak with two authors who will shed some light on just how we can get past this tragedy. Hi Neesha, welcome and thank you for joining me and coming on to Boland's blog to talk about the tragic story of Trayvon Martin. But if you could first introduce yourself and give me just a brief background as to what you do and what you've written and all those goodies.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me. I am an author of young adult novels, and I was born in India. I lived there until I was about 5. We moved to Canada, Toronto, Canada, when I was in the early 70s. And I grew up there and then moved to the U.S. I have 3 young adult novels out, all of them featuring Indian American teens. I focus on that experience. And I also write romance under a pen name, which I will not reveal. Okay. So I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, good. Thank you. When you first heard about Trayvon Martin, what went through your mind?
You know, honestly, my very first thought was, not again. That was my first thought. I thought, okay, how many times is this going to happen? How many times do we go through this? What's really sad now to me is that I can hear about young unarmed black males getting shot, either by the police or not, and kind of not even blink an eye. Like it's almost part of the scenery now, you know. And I think when I first heard about Trayvon, it was the same thing. Again, I thought, okay, here we go again. And then it slowly, as the details of the case began to roll out, it was just infuriating.
You spoke on your Facebook wall about the wailing that you could hear. And I was struck that you used the word wailing because of the 911 calls. And
part of it was because I really wanted to be at the protest, you know. But I'm a mom. I have 2 kids, and I was at home with them on my own, so I couldn't join. So the post that I put up was lighting a candle in support of the gathering tonight for a life too soon snatched away. I heard your wailing, sweetheart. I don't need experts to tell me those were the cries of a frightened child begging for help, not a grown man in hot pursuit with a loaded gun. I'm lighting this flame in the hope that the Florida legal system provides justice for the grieving family. My heart goes out to the parents. And I think for me, in this case, and in all of the others, it's really, really important to highlight the imbalance of power. Because I think that you know, a lot of times, many of us understand in our guts what's right and what's wrong. And what happens is we get a lot of facts and numbers, facts and quotes, and numbers flung at us to sort of prove to us that what we feel in our gut is not what's actually happening. And it creates this real discord and disconnect. So for me, this is very clear. It's very obvious what's happening. And I really think it's important to highlight what the difference is in terms of power relations here, right? We have a man who is much bigger than this child that he's pursuing. And this is a child. He's under 18, right? He's a young boy, and he's going to his father's house. And we have a man who's much bigger than him with a loaded gun in pursuit. I mean, to me, it can't get much more obvious than that, you know, in terms of imbalance of power.
And the man in question, Zimmerman, was told to stay away, to not pursue. Right. Yeah. And he did anyway, and so he had some kind of motivation. You know, he was after this child for something. You know, I can't say what that something might be. Do you think it's the fear of the hoodie, I call it? I mean, I know the hoodie march was last night, and I actually spoke with a protester last night right after, and she was extremely moved by what she experienced while down there. And the fact that there were people of all nationalities present, according to her, was really supportive, was supportive to her. She got a lot out of it emotionally, but it still begs the question, you know, where do we go from here, and what happens as a result of something like this? It happens every day, unfortunately. This just now has hit the mainstream media in such a way that we haven't seen in recent years. I think Amadou Diallo was probably the last one that I can recall where something like this happened and people just gathered around with fury.
Yeah. Well, there was the Troy Davis execution too, you know, where there was just overwhelming evidence.
Yes.
And overwhelming public outrage at what was going on. And there was no state of execution for that, you know. And in this case, it's the same thing. It's this call for justice. It's a cry for public outcry for justice. And I'm sorry, what was your question?
I lost track of the question, but I do want to,
Oh, right, so all sorts of nationalities.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes, the comfort.
You know, and you know, and I really think that social media plays such a huge role in what's going on right now. You know, with the sort of people waking up, you know, because now anybody can speak up and be heard by hundreds of people, thousands of people. Whereas before, you know, we relied on other people to get our messages out. We relied on certain gatekeepers, people who controlled or had access to media. We're the only ones that could get a voice out to lots of people. But now, any sort of average person can go online and tweet or Facebook, and it can go viral, and hundreds of thousands of people can hear the voice of average, common, everyday folks. And so I think that you know, this case is getting a lot of media attention, partly because of the age that we're living in. And I do agree with you that these kinds of cases tend to happen all the time. There's a few of them that we actually hear about, and even fewer that actually make national coverage. But I think it's all nationalities, people of every race, see the injustice in this, especially with the release of those 9/11 tapes, the 9/11 tapes. You know, I think that's the emotional piece here. You know, there are mothers who are listening to this who can hear the cries of a child. You know, I mean, no, I'm not fooled. I feel like you've got to be kidding me. You know, that is not, I have heard the cries of grown men. That's not what they sound like. And I have children. I know the difference between a man crying out and a child crying out, begging for his life. That is a child begging for his life. A man with a loaded gun who is in pursuit. To me, it doesn't make sense that he would be crying out for his life.
And how he hasn't been arrested yet is
yeah. Well, that's the mind-boggling piece. Why? There's been nothing. There has been absolutely nothing done.
And when so much time passes, it allows for, you know, spins. People can change the story around. They didn't do drug testing. They didn't have any, you know, alcohol testing, which could have played a part in this. So evidence kind of goes away when we don't have time.
Well,
at the time.
It's easy to sweep it under the rug, you know. And I have, you know what, there's no doubt in my mind that if the situation were reversed, that if it was a black man that had shot, that went and pursued a white boy child, man child, and shot him in the chest, there is no doubt, I would be willing to bet everything I own that someone would have been charged with something.
Immediately.
Something.
There would be no question, and the immediacy of it. I want to shift gears just a little bit to talk about what, you know, how can we move forward? What can be done, if anything? And I am pushing the fact that education is lacking in many ways. And I do believe it starts with the books in schools. And it's a real digression from what we're talking about, but you know, what's happening in the schools that is not resonating with the public and people who have these preconceived notions about some kid wearing a hoodie, that if you look a certain way, clearly there's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I think, you know, well, this is a huge question, because really what we're talking about is teaching power relations, you know, in schools. And then once you start teaching power relations, then you're going to have kids questioning things, you know, and then we have to provide answers, and it's such a complicated issue, you know, because when you look at power relations, it's really obvious who holds the power in this society. You know, you just have to look around. The power is with gatekeepers of media, in one. It's with, you know, people who have a lot of access to resources and money, too. You know, and if you look at sort of the gender and the race of those people who are in power, you begin to see a pattern. And when you start looking at the most disenfranchised and the poorest people, really anywhere on the planet, you begin to see a pattern. I agree. I think absolutely it's about raising consciousness. And part of raising consciousness is education. Mm-hmm. And that's why, you know, anytime a government or a dictatorship takes over, the first thing they do is they burn the books of the previous regime. You know, because what they're doing is they're wiping out a consciousness, and they want to wipe the slate clean so they can put, you know, sow the seeds of a new system of thought. And that's what we are fighting for here, is consciousness. You know, people's imagination, what children are able to imagine for themselves. You know, and it's in the imagination that, you know, if young black and brown children, for example, cannot imagine themselves as powerful, they will never, that will never come to fruition, right?
Yes.
If you can't imagine it, you can't be it, right? And so then that's why the media is so powerful, because the media is what sows the seed.
So just in closing, what are your final thoughts about the Trayvon Martin case? Where do you think we can go from here?
Well, my hope is that, you know, with the rally last night, that rally was very impassioned, and people are really demanding justice in this case. And my hope is that there will be enough public pressure upon, you know, the Florida legal system to at least bring this man to trial and have a fair hearing for this life that was lost. You know, that's my.
This family will not be able to go on until there's justice served.
Yes, and that's my prayer for them, is that they are able to get that same closure so they can move on.
Yes.
You know, and this child's soul can rest peacefully, you know. But I'm really grateful to people like you who are able to do this and get word, you know, get fired up and do something about it. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Have a great, great day.
What you really want? Tell me what you need, what you really need. Tell me what you want, what you really want. Tell me what you need, what you really want.